The irony about this year's class is the seniors are exiting, and that started out as a big class with 10 guys. And then this year's class is coming in, there's 12 people in it. A couple of reasons. One, we want to expand our roster. We're going to have a bigger roster next year because we've done so well in developing guys and having four-year program guys and, redshirting a couple guys and taking some players that maybe aren't worldwide names and really developing into names that are known around the Big East by the time they're done. And that's one of my favorite things about this. And then the second, piece of irony involved in this is when the graduating class this year came in, there was maybe two or three national names, but there were a lot of kids who came through camp. There were a lot of regional level kids. There were a lot of local kids who I thought were solid players that wanted to build a program that had enthusiasm for Xavier. And really, I thought I projected them as juniors and seniors being, developed, completed players and having a role. And that's certainly what happened with the senior class, and I think that's why we had such a great season and a great senior group. So out goes a 10-man class, in comes a 12-man class. And we won't do this ever again. We probably won't do it regularly, but I thought it was worth doing for a couple of reasons. And having said that, it's a bit of diversity to it. There's some new components of it. But again, I liken it to this year's class where I think two or three guys will be dependent to fight for things early on. And then there's probably another three or four that by the end of the year will be knocking on the door. And then I think there's three or four guys that will have solid roles and contribute to the program over their 4 years. And then by the time junior or senior year comes around, be in a position to get on the field and have strong finishes to their career. One thing I enjoy is diversity and getting guys to come from different corners of the world and the country, meshing them together as a group, and obviously starting some new recruiting connections and relationships as well. And the first part of that is the East Coast presence that we started to develop. We have a student athlete from Maryland this year, Gavin Boyer, who's coming in from Baltimore Celtic, a guy that came to our ID camp in December, was still uncommitted in December, which is unique. I think he switched clubs late in his junior year and kind of flew under the radar a little bit and is a tricky, small, dangerous player, which has a little bit of Will and Matt Walker in him, and a guy who I think might be the surprise of the class, and a guy who comes from a very strong club in Baltimore and is the first guy we've gotten out of the Maryland area. About an hour south of him is someone he knows well, and Sammy Sergi. Sam comes from the Olney Boys and Girls Club, which plays in the U.S. Development Academy, and I think is one of the more talented teams from top to bottom in the country. Sam is leading his team in scoring this year with 9 goals. He is kind of a slippery and sneaky attacker. Sam can dunk a basketball. Sam can do a backflip. Sam was an all-Metro field goal kicker this past fall. Sam is very athletic with a wiry frame. He's about 6'2", and he's very good in the air, but is sneaky on the dribble, can combine to get free, can score goals out of the air, can run past people, and is another guy who I think is going to be a good target combination, face you up, play in the ground, play in the air forward, and is a freshman that I wouldn't be surprised if, makes his way into the rotation early in the year here and is able to plug some minutes for us. Continuing along the East Coast, we have Owen Jeffs from North Carolina. Owen is a guy who was the first commit of this class. Owen is a guy that looks more like a middle linebacker if you saw him on the street. And then when you saw him in the soccer field, he plays like a middle linebacker. Very hard on the tackle, has a lot of John Otting in him, one of the guys that was in our program. Very spirited, a good teammate, good leader, does his job, is a really tough out and a long day if you go up against him one-on-one, and a kid who has worked hard in his recovery, has put some good size on, coming back from the injury, and I think come middle of the summer, he'll be right back where he is. And again, North Carolina being another state that we haven't hit up yet, and one we're excited to get a presence into here with recruiting. And then the final one is Josh Neptune. Josh came to us via New Jersey, played in the same area Coach Birch grew up in as a prep player and as someone Coach Birch identified at a camp out on the East Coast, and then he came back to our camp this year and really made a good impression on us. Josh is one of those guys who doesn't look like he's trying to run, and then all of a sudden after 30 yards you realize he's the fastest guy there. Smooth runner, effortless dribbler, really slithery and slippery one-on-one, and I think he probably has to add some meat to his bones and get used to some of the daily demands of Division I soccer, and then once he does that, he certainly has things you can't teach. off of the dribble, and is a guy that I think down the road will be a real dangerous player in the Big East. We also lost via graduation a goalkeeper, and then we lost via via transfer, a guy that decided to, Matt Apple decided to up his engineering pedigree and go back to Ohio State and not play soccer and really get a full-time internship and concentrate on that. So that kind of threw a curveball in our goalkeeper plans, as he was probably our goalkeeper in waiting, and we had to bring in a couple goalkeepers for this class. We're actually bringing in 3, and there's a little bit of variety in each. There's 2 incoming freshmen, then there's an incoming guy who will be a sophomore. The first guy is Seth Junion, who comes from Kentucky in the Louisville area, and is a guy we saw at camp last summer. Has a 6'4" frame, a lanky frame, has a lot of interesting tools and a great skill set and a great physical makeup that we'll use as the basis here and really try to add to and see if he, come junior year can compete and be our goalkeeper and add to his frame a little bit. And I think Coach Starr is a good mentor for him and a guy that's certainly interesting to see how he does when he's in a full-time environment. Second goalkeeper is David Pfeifless. David is a guy that reminds me of a couple goalkeepers I've coached in the past who are winners, who have a great attitude, who are tireless workers. He's very athletic. He's very quick. I think David has been in and out of the Chicago Fire's Development Academy rotation the last couple of years. Is a winner, a great team member, a guy that will work hard, and a guy that I think has had a cup of coffee at a high level nationally here, and is part of a deep pool in Chicago this year. They have as many as 4 or 5 good Division I goalies in Chicago this year, and David was right in that mix. And David is a guy that I think after a year or two of seasoning and developing a couple aspects of his game, towards the end of his career is going to be a guy that's really in a position to challenge. And then the third goalkeeper in the group, Lucas Fancello, is kind of a funny story. He came to us from Lynn University. As a guy that reached out to us late, probably in the spring, beginning of the spring, middle of the spring type of thing. Jumped in goal and got the starting nod halfway through the season for Lynn. Went 11-0, won a national championship at the Division II level, and was recognized on a conference level and the all-tournament team at the Final Four this year. A guy who reminds me of some great professional in college goalkeepers, most likely the guy Yarborough right now, who's playing for the U.S. national team, a guy who's probably no taller than 5'9" or 5'10", but is very athletic, very brave, coming off his line, very quick. At times will be like a 11th field player more so than a goalie. And a guy that won, hasn't lost at the college level, won a national championship, made some big plays in the final minutes of their national championship game, and is a guy that has decided to redshirt and wait a year and work in his game and get acclimated to our program while we have our 2 seniors battle out the goalkeeping position this year. So 3 goalkeepers, again, 4 guys from the East Coast, which is interesting. And then the next component of that recruiting class, the next person is Joe Ash Sutherland. Joe Ash comes again from New Zealand, which will give us 3 Kiwis on the roster next year. Joe Ash comes via the Ole Academy, which James Prosser had previously coached at. James is a Cincinnati native, a guy who's a friend of our programs, whose father went to school here, whose brother went to school here, and his family still lives 2 miles down the road in Oakley. So it's funny how we've developed that relationship. Joe Ash played with Corey Brown at Ole. Joe Ash is a guy that reminds me of a little bit of Will Trapp from the Columbus Crew, a little bit of Kyle Beckerman from the U.S. national team, and a little bit of Dax McCarty. He's a guy that makes his way around the middle of the field, kind of glides around, connects passes, has a little bit of bite to him, but also can, create goals and shoot from distance and make a final pass if need be. He's a guy that's going to fill out physically a little bit, but one of the few freshmen I think will be ready to compete right away, and probably has played at a high level. He's had a couple of training camps with the national team in New Zealand, and a guy that I think is certainly battle tested and soccer savvy, and probably has played at a high level and has a good football IQ to him that probably you won't see from a lot of freshmen. We have 2 left-footed defenders from the state of Florida. One of them is probably more suited as a left center back. That's Connor Mackey from the IMG Academy. Another guy who's played at the Development Academy, meaning he's played as many as 30, 33 games this year all across the country at a pretty high level, and certainly with the IMG Academy down in Florida, has a boarding experience away from home and has a daily training experience which I certainly think will help, facilitate his transition to college soccer. Connor's a big guy. Connor's about 6'1". Connor likes to hit people. Connor's physical. He's good in the air. He's left-footed. And the thing that I notice is he's very comfortable passing out of the back. He's very comfortable going from a hectic situation, winning the ball, and defending one-on-one to calming down and connecting passes. Has a very good left foot, good range to him. And he's a guy that started out up in the Northeast, and then due to his father's, vocation, had to relocate to Florida, and I think is socially mature, and a guy that I think is going to be in our lineup sooner rather than later because he's versatile, he's physical, and his dad actually played in the Montreal Expos system as well, which I think has a certain athletic pedigree to him. The other left-footed defender out of Florida is Jacob Goodall. Jacob played with the Chargers program. Plays a lot of left back, reminds me a little bit of Matt Hill in that he's a technical left back who is comfortable getting forward out of the back. He's very comfortable on the ball. He's a great technical passing left back. But a guy now we got to teach the importance of defending on and off the ball, a guy we got to get a little fitter, a guy that we got to get used to the physical demands of, Division I Big East soccer. And once we do that, I think his, the skill level he has and his ability to get his head up and connect the game for us makes him unique, and certainly reminds me of some other guys come through here that have done very well. The final two guys in the class, Robert DeWitt. Robert is a guy that came through our camp. Last summer identified him. Comes from Rockhurst Jesuit High School, which is annually one of the top 10 high school programs in the country. Guy Chris Lawson, who I know very well. Rockhurst has been very good to myself, particularly at Northwestern. Very reliable over the years. I believe they have 5 former players in MLS right now. And Robert is a Xavier player, and Robert's a Rockhurst player, because I think Rockhurst program with the Jesuit background and some of the core components they have and how they do things is a lot like Xavier, and I think he's a good student, a leader. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain somewhere down the road, a mature, really reliable kid, an accountable kid that will probably compete to be a tucked-in left back, left midfielder at some point, can play in the holding role, can play in the attacking role. A guy who's very simple and very smooth technically and works really hard. It was a very proud moment for us this past December where Robert was an NSCAA High School All-American and played in the National High School All-Star game at the Final Four, which is, I think, the 3rd straight year we're represented there. So he's a guy that I think will fit in very well to our culture right away. And then the final guy is Travis Rosen. Travis we saw at the Academy playoffs, playing for the San Antonio Scorpions, and then came to our camp a couple days later and really fit in well and had a pretty much an easy recruitment in that. I think he wanted to be here. We wanted him to be here. The visit went well, and then within 3 days of camp committed here. But had some national interest from some top 10 schools, and is a guy that gets in line very well, beats people, powerful, low to the ground, low center of gravity, likes to beat people off the dribble, reminds me of a hockey player with his build. And a guy that I think, led his team in scoring 2 years in an academy environment down in the South, which is very competitive. And a guy that could be another surprise of the group, but definitely will add to our presence, particularly as we want to be an attacking, pressing, north-south team and, continue to go, guys. So 12 people in the group, good collection of personalities, very impressed with some of the leadership they've shown from social media and over the telephone and the internet, trying to connect with one another in a team that I think, like our outgoing seniors did, comes together as a group and has some guys that really develop and ply their trade and wait their turn and really invest in the program for a few years. And then we certainly hear from a lot of them in years 2, 3, and 4.